الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We are thankful, alhamdulillah, to have another Ihsan Foundation for West Africa webinar for the sake of benefiting the general community in North America and potentially abroad, inshallah, anyone in the English-speaking world. Today's topic is parents, filial piety, and our guest speaker for today is Ustad Yusef Wiley. A brief introduction. He was born in South Los Angeles, joined a gang at 13, and was incarcerated at 21. After 22 years, he was released in 2012, following his conversion to Islam. He now works to combat gang violence, contributes to re-entry initiatives, and serves as a certified speaker and life coach, inspiring positive change in others. Before we get the ball rolling, I encourage everyone to check out the Ihsan Foundation website, ihsanfoundation.org. Check out the variety of different projects that are ongoing, and many of them have been ongoing for several years. Ihsan has been around since the mid-90s, so may Allah grant tawfiq and allow things to continue to move in an upward motion, and may Allah put barakah in any and all the effort that especially the folks on the ground for Ihsan in West Africa that they're putting in. May Allah bless them, may Allah accept from them, and may Allah bless those we're trying to serve, from education to healthcare, orphan support, so on and so forth. Every dollar goes extremely far in that part of the world, so never underestimate going to the website, sending a check through the mail, even if it's donating $1, $5, never underestimate that, because it's in Allah's hands before it's in the hands of whoever you're giving it to and whoever you're giving it for. So may Allah accept from all of you. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand over the figurative mic to Ustad Yusef, and then I'll rejoin a bit later and we'll have a dialogue, inshallah. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I just wanted to start with, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and prayers upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just because we know that there's no barakah, no benefit, except by starting with that. So the topic that I wanted to discuss is the topic around filial piety, or for the Muslims, for what we understand in the Arabic language, in the Quranic language, specifically, bir. Bir, or righteousness, or kindness, or honoring of the parents. So we know, with this term, I mean, it's just so many ways we could describe this. We could talk about this bir, because I want to set the tone or the concept around this discussion, because we're talking about piety. We're talking about filial piety. In the Quran, when Allah Ta'ala mentions bir, oftentimes the translation or the rough translation is right, like the right of the parent. But we also see a rendition or a translation of kindness to the parents. I think both, for the sake of this conversation that we're having today, I want to use kindness or honoring of the parents, because this is such a lost aspect or idea, not only in the Islamic culture in which we represent, but in the world, essentially. The world in America, those of us that are here, this is literally lost. This idea of kindness, or the rights that the parents have right. In fact, the rights tend to be given more so to the child, to the children. The children have more rights than the parents in today's society. Any type of discipline, any type of reprimand that a rightful parent initiates in this culture there's repercussions for it by this society, by this culture, that it's either abuse, some level of abuse, even if it's not what we consider a spanking, right? Even that, of course, we know would be considered a form of abuse. It's gotten so bad to where they can literally divorce their parents. You can go to a court, go to a judge, go to a social worker and say, hey, I don't like my parents. My parents are doing things that I disagree with. So I want to divorce my parents. This is something that is happening in this culture. And unfortunately, because we live here, we're subject to this same thing. Our sons and daughters are receiving this same bombardment. While on the flip side, as Muslims, we're trying to educate them to have this. We want this to be embedded in our children. So I just want to, Allah Ta'ala is many places in the Quran that mentions this bir. Specifically, there's a verse, and I won't do the entire verse, but it's a part of this verse that's very important. I want to look at where Allah mentions in Surah Isra, وَقَدَّ رَبُّكَ عَلَى تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And when it talks about the ihsan towards the parents here, in translation, Allah mentions, and your Lord has decreed, mandated, that you not worship except him. And then right after this tawheed, or this tawheedic concept, this oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it follows it with parents, kindness towards the parents. And which kind of, it actually shows us how the importance of this idea of kindness towards the parents. And excellent treatment. So it mentions excellent treatment, then it goes on. We know the verse, it mentions, never say oof to them, be kind to them, whether or not they reach old age or not, etc. We are to have this. This should be something as a concept, as an idea, as a practice that's well known and established within the Islamic household, period. Cut and dry, right? But unfortunately, that is not the case. One of the reasons I believe, or we believe, many of us, that this is happening too, is because of the loss of shukr. So shukr, this gratitude that we all should have. No one can, we're taught this. Like if somebody gives you something, if somebody offers you a gift, what do? You say thank you. You say, you smile and you say thank you. Whatever that gift is, there's this idea that I'm going to show gratitude, shukr. Who better to show shukr to than our parents, right? Who better? Someone that's sacrificed for us, someone that's worked hard to ensure our education needs are met, that our health needs are met, that our a roof over our head is being met, that clothing on our back is being facilitated. All of these things that naturally come with the role of the parent should be something that compels a level of shukr. And as a result of shukr, not just by simply saying thank you or shukr towards the parents or showing shukr, but something that is long lasting, something that continues, right? As a result of the building of and forming of that relationship. However, in this culture, again, we're talking about the bombardment of things in this culture that has moved our children away from this idea and this concept of having beer. Obviously, it doesn't sell, right? Beer towards the parents doesn't help the 2%, right, get rich. Because if they're selling us things, if they're selling our children things in media, mass media, and telling our children, hey, buy this, hey, you know, this is the new fad, this is the new thing, do this instead, right? They want to have that way and influence over our children. And this is one of the pieces I think as Muslims we miss, is that we have to understand this culture. We have to understand what they're feeding to our children, whether it's in the public school setting, if that's what we are in, or just in society, social media, et cetera, right? Access to the internet. They do not benefit by having children that are being raised in America that listen to their parents. Because guess what? That doesn't sell. Because if we encourage our children, hey, you don't need Air Jordans, you don't need, you know, these fancy Gucci belt, or, you know, these things, it's not important. Why society is telling them otherwise, right? Who are they going to listen to? The culture is not designed for them to listen. What sells, right? Exactly. What sells? So it's not ideal for this society in which we live in to encourage Filial Piety Day. There's no reason for it. So unfortunately, as a result of it, we see what we see. Now, you know, typical parents, Muslim parents, is just, you know, our children engage in something, their response is typically, it's haram. Just, that's it. Our only response to our children is haram, kufr. No, subhanAllah, astaghfirullah, right? That's kufr. That's it. No investigation, no deep dive into that thing that's attracting our son or our daughter, which we should be doing. We should be examining these things that are having an influence on our children, right? We should be sitting down with them and investigating. Okay, you want Air Jordans, they cost $225. Let's understand why, you know, what is it about these Air Jordans that probably some poor Pakistani child, you know, sold these shoes together for less than $1 of US currency and selling it to you, where you have, you know, this sweatshops and sweatshop labor that is participating in this process of you getting this Nike Air Jordan shoe. Let's study it. Let's look at it. Honestly, that was one of the reasons, you know, I would probably need to let go of a lot of other things, right? But me personally, I actually stopped wearing Nikes years ago. Like, it's probably been 30 years now. And because when I learned how they were bringing together this shoe, and there was a story on 60 Minutes, which unfortunately we're so numb to the realities of the world, right? I saw that story and I haven't purchased a Nike or Air Jordan since I saw that aired on 60 Minutes. But how do we get our children to get to this point and dissect information and look at information before it becomes a conflict in the home where they're going against their parents, where there's conflict in the home to where there's disrespect towards the parent? The bottom line is they want to have this influence. That's the key thing we should take, is that understand there's no benefit of your child having beer towards you when the obvious is that we need your child to be under our influence, because that's how we continue to get rich in this culture. These are the things that needs to be talked about at the, you know, Friday night family day in the masjid, in the halaqah, right? Let's understand, why is it that I need this? Why is it that I want to go out to this park with these individuals? Who are these individuals that my sons are hanging out with, or my daughters want to go to a trip or a party? What? Let's examine these things that's influencing our children. so that we can understand why the level of influence is there upon them. Understand something about me as a Muslim. I'm a Muslim revert to Islam. I reverted to Islam in 1994. I was someone that was on the other end of that child being influenced away from their parents. I was that kid that was talking to your son and saying, no, let's go out. When the parents said, no, stay home or be home by 8 o'clock. I was saying, no, it ain't going to hurt. I was one of those bad kids that used to say, no, come on. Because it's ingrained in this culture to have influence, not for the parent to have influence. There's no encouragement. There's no concerted effort to have children obey their parents. So we have to really take a deep look at this and understand why it's so ingrained, not only in this culture, but now affecting our children. Now, you know, when we think of the various hadiths that we read in the text of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we know what's right and what's wrong. We know this, but is it reaching the hearts of our children? And I want to relay something where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and we're very familiar with this, similar to the hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a sahaba or companion that wanted to seek the jihad with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first response that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to this companion was, do you have a parent that's alive? And the response of that companion was what? Yes, I'm taking care of my parent. Well, that's your jihad. That is your jihad for you, to take care of your parent. Knowing and understanding for the Muslim how important jihad fi sabilillah is, to understand that story, again, adds to that importance of why Birrul Walidain should be at the forefront. After Tawheed itself, after La ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Rasulullah, Birrul Walidain, right? That's what we see in the Quran. Also, we know that one of the characteristics that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam talked about around bir is that he said that is a characteristic of the movement, right, of the believer. That this Birrul Walidain is actually a characteristic of the Muslim, of the believer. It's a characteristic. So in the way we engage with our parents, the way we interact with our parents is a characteristic of a mu'min. So how are you a mu'min if you're doing that to your parents, or saying, talking back, giving side eyes, saying, okay, later, I'm gaming right now. Hold on, Mom, I'm gaming. Just in a second. You hear her? Literally, these kids, right? Doing this with their friends in regards to their parents. That's just my mom. Wow. We see it. It's running rampant through the community. We know this. How do we fix it? How do we solve it? Again, we have to look at this culture. We have to understand this culture, because one of the first things that many of our children say, oh, you're old school. That's one of their favorite lines. Oh, he's an uncle. He's just an uncle. Don't worry about him. He's old school. He just he they just don't know. They don't understand. But we need to understand. We actually need to understand. We need to understand what's penetrating their minds and reaching their heart as believers. What is reaching this and getting to this, to where they're saying, to beer. That's what we have to do. Paying attention to what's happening around them, paying attention to things that are happening in our world that we live in, that's taking control of how they're processing information, which ultimately allows them to process how they respond to people that they should have beer for. And if we don't get a handle on this, we're going to completely lose a generation. We're talking about Gen Z, right, that we're in, this new group of youngsters. I was in a Muslim country, I'm not going to name a name, recently. And well, actually, I was in a Muslim state. I was in another Muslim state. I'm from California. I was in another Muslim state. And I'm calling it that because there was a lot of Muslims there, right? And I noticed that many of the children had been impacted by the culture. I was there on business, and I was actually helping some believers there dealing with this topic that we're on now. And before I got to the masjid, I actually Ubered to the masjid, but something was telling me to get out of the Uber early. I didn't want to, instead of pulling up in front of the masjid and getting out. And the reason why is because I noticed a group of youngsters. And just looking at them in the culture, I could see that they wasn't, Black, African American, anything like that. I was really struck because what I saw was someone whose parents probably wasn't born in the United States have now adopted the culture that once had me as a youth, which is gangs, right? That subculture blew my mind, literally blew my mind. So I had the Uber driver. I said, no, this is fine. He was telling me, we're almost there. I was like, no, this is fine. Let me out right here. And when I got out the car, they looking. Same stuff I did as a gang member before I had Islam. See somebody pull up, get out the car. We checking them out, seeing what's up. Is this a victim? Is this somebody we're going to intimidate, rob? Or if he's young, our age, try to get him over on our side, gangbang with us, whatever, right? But that was the look I got. The same, and what's interesting for me is because I'm an ex-gang member before Islam, I understood exactly what was happening. So when I got out, they looked, but when they seen I didn't have fear and that I just stood there, I was literally waiting for them to approach me. I wanted them. Come on. And as they were starting to walk towards me, they were looking at it, just about 7 of them, 7 youngsters. You could tell they was saying things to each other, and a couple of them was not speaking English. And they was saying things. And so I said, Assalamu alaikum. At least 3 of them said it back to me. Wa alaikum salam. Imagine that. But they was dressed like the subculture of gangs. They was out there. And this is the fear that I have for the Muslims in this society. That's come over here to get away from wars maybe in their country and to develop and have a life in America. education and things of this nature. And then guess what? Their children are subject to that. The very thing that saved my life, Islam, from gangs, the very thing they're running towards. That's amazing to me. And that tells me that we have to get to the bottom of it on the educational. We have to dissect and deconstruct this culture for them, with them, so that they can really understand what is in control here. What's really determining these decisions that you're making now as a youth? None of them could have been over 21 years old. None of them could have been over 20, 21, 22 max. But they were moving in the community like thugs. Think about that. That is really, it's sad, but at the same time, I think there's a way to reach them, because I didn't have a lot of time that specific day because I was headed to the masjid to do some work, and by the time I left the masjid that evening, there was no one out there. But I felt almost it was a lost moment, but I felt like I made an impact. Here it is, this African American bro getting out the car. You know, I got a little gray now, but they kind of see I got a little swag about me. You know, I still got a little bit of that, right? But it's halal now, right? It's halal. And my salams to them, that impact that it had, right? And I'm wondering, maybe some of their parents are in the masjid. Maybe their mother, where I'm going right now, is in this masjid. Because this was their neighborhood, this was their community that I saw them in. So I'm very passionate about this subject. So I'm going to begin to kind of wind down so we can continue to have this conversation around beer. Because again, so much we can recover as a community if we can recover our youth. And we have to remember what I mentioned about the shukr. I think we have to dive in there first to understand, to try to get it. That can be an impetus to get them to the beer, is by giving them the shukr, the understanding of what that means and why they should have shukr in regards to their parents. And then from there, understanding the beer and the rights and responsibilities that goes with being a son or a daughter of someone. So alhamdulillah, that is what I have to say on that topic right now. But again, it's a very touchy subject, and election just happened in this country, and more influence, right? More influence, and it's not us. They're not being influenced by us. They're being influenced by others, and we should be concerned. So, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair for the several points of benefit. The first one that I want to pick your brain about a little bit, you emphasize the importance of shukr and that kind of being a prerequisite leading up to bir, right? So starting with gratitude, and then for that to develop into bir, loosely translated as piety. What are some ideas that you have in terms of how we can develop or cultivate that sense of shukr, that sense of gratitude within the youth? What do you think is a good starting point? What are some ideas that you have in connection with that?
Yes, one of the most impactful things, or I'm gonna say two biggest things that I believe that's been impactful in regards to this topic, in regards to our youth, has been one, history lessons, teaching our youth history. I think that's really a loss. Some people that tell it is boring, so our children nowadays, they're hard to stimulate them, right? When we're competing with video games and and PS5s and stuff like that. But I think in the way that we deliver history is very important because there's so many lessons in history. For the African American culture, I use the golden age of the Moor, right? I use that particular era of the Muslim empire. I hate to say empire, but the Islamic establishment of the Abbasids and during that time period of the Moor, the West Africans, right, that went into Spain. And I use that and because that brought forth science and physicists and mathematics and when you start teaching that aspect of history, people get intrigued. They're like, really? My ancestors, really? And that's how I was able to get a lot of the gangs out of the gangs and converting into Islam. Clearly, I would say close to 300 or more folks converted to Islam under my, I guess, tutelage, if you would. I hate to, well, it was all about a lot of converts, but I'm saying in terms of teaching, at least about that many during my time of incarceration and even some after my incarceration. Now, for other cultures, the thing that I use, and I use this for both the African American and non-African American Muslims, is taking them to the streets. When I was a school teacher, when I taught Islamic studies at Averroes High School in the Bay Area, I would take them to Oakland. I would take them to East Oakland. I would take my students to East Oakland and get them out the car. Hey, we're not driving and looking, right? Yeah. I'm getting them out the car and showing them what it looks like to not have a parent or to have a parent that's not a Muslim that is struggling and going through something. I gave them a lot of different scenarios that I would show them, and I would frame it. So each time we would stop, we would talk about it, and then I would put it back in the van, and then we would go somewhere like a park or somewhere. We would talk about it. We would debrief about what they saw, right? And then we'll break it down. Then we'll go out again, do the same thing. This time it might be a hospital, right, in the hood. And I would get access because I'm connected with folks or whatever, and get me in there, get out of there, go to a cafeteria, it's lunchtime by now, let's have lunch, let's talk about it, let's debrief, let's talk. What did you see, right? I didn't have to even say shukr. They said shukr, right? And then finally, at the end, because if it went 2 days or more than 1 day, I would take another day or a weekend to get them out, get the parents to sign off for me to take them on a Saturday and take them to do feeds where they would pass out food to the homeless. And they would pack the food first, and then during the time that they were packing the food, I would walk around the room. I got pictures from all of this, where I would walk around as they're packing the food and ask them, how do they feel about this? Because this is going to someone that literally doesn't have this. Many of our Muslim youth have this entitlement issue, right? They feel entitled, right? I get what I want, do what I want. My parents going to drop me off where I need to be dropped off at and pick me up when I say pick me up, right? So when I show them this, and I asked them these questions, and they say, SubhanAllah. One cried and got overwhelmed. This happened many times where one may cry and just get overwhelmed, and they go out, need to take a step out, and just like, SubhanAllah, And, it's making me a little emotional thinking about that because I understand how deep it gets. And at the end, the one of the facilitators of the food, the giveaway, she had an opportunity to talk to him. And, sister, spoke to him, and we had him in a gymnasium. And she just, we got in a circle, and she went to the middle and just spoke to him. And like, look, I do this every day. This is what I do, feed the community, And these are people that just don't have it. They just fell on hard times, and she told them stories about various people. Like there was a lady that once upon a time did have it well, lived well, and her husband left her, and she ended up homeless because she didn't have the education, she couldn't go back to school, and she fell on hard times, and her family turned on her, and she ended up homeless, right? And she's one of them very people that come there to get food. Someone that lived lavish, drove a Mercedes, all that stuff. We don't think that exists there because we're in this insulated bubble, right?
Yeah.
As Muslims. But this exists. Even Muslims are out there. Believe it or not, there are Muslims in there, but we don't talk about it. We literally don't talk about it, but they're out there. Believe me, I'm in this industry, so I know they're out there. I work in this industry, so I see it, I hear about it, or somebody, they usually call me if somebody's Muslim. They like, Brother Yusef, we have a brother that's homeless, or a sister, or a family. I'm the one get that call, not the imam, right? So I just think it's something, shukr is something that can be embedded really quickly. And those are just two ways, the history and then the shock and awe, if you would, of really experiencing what happens as a result of the lack of taqwa, the lack of deen, right? Or the lack of being in the masjid. This is what happens when you're not in the masjid, when you're not in the jama'ah or in the community, you're not making tawbah, you're not having shukr. This is the result of that. And this is how I talk to them. This is the result of that. Right? Me, I tell people all the time, the 22 years that I served in prison was a result of lack of beer. Because the day that I was arrested for my crime was the same day that I told my parents no, I wasn't staying home. They were on their way to dinner, my parents, and they knew I was kind of distraught about something was going on in the neighborhood because I was an active gang member at the time, and they knew something was off with me that day. So they told me I can remember this so vividly. They said, "Son, just stay home till we get back. Me and your mom, we're just going to have dinner. We'll be back. We can talk more." I said no. I said, hey, this is who I am. That's what I said. That was something else. This is who I am, Mom, Dad. Took me 22 years away. That incident. I completely associate that act with my 22 years of being in prison.
When you share that with,
go ahead. No, I was just going to say, when they found out where I was, they was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I called from the jail and I told them where I was at, and they was like, "What happened?" And I made up a story and just said I would be home one day, but I was gone for 22 years. I finally told them why I was incarcerated when they came to visit me. And when I told them, when I came clean, my mom I seen her, she was fumbling through her purse as I was telling them what had happened. My mom pulled out an article and did like that to the prison plexiglass. I said, "I know why you're in there," because it made the news. So we have to really pay attention to our youth right now, because more of them are turning to these gangs. I know this for a fact. Whether it's in Toronto, Canada, or Detroit, Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, or New York, California, you name it, San Diego, our young Muslims are being influenced by the culture. And we have to figure that out.
I was going to ask, when you share your story with them, some of your personal experiences, what kind of reactions do you normally get from these youth? Because what you're sharing with them, it's not a made-up story, it's not a fairy tale, it's not
Hmm.
fiction, it's the absolute core of nonfiction. This is as real as it
Yes.
gets. What kind of reactions, what kind of responses do you get from them?
Well, most of the time, particularly with the girls. If there's girls in the room, they get emotional, very emotional about it. You know, and they want to, they don't want to get caught up. They do better as a result of it. The boys tend to take time a little longer, but their reaction immediately is, you know what? I need to figure this out. They show shukr. They want to know more about it. In some cases, I recall, especially when I was living in the Bay Area still, I would often get a lot of mentees, parents that wanted me to mentor their kids. I did that a lot. In some instances, I would even go into their homes and teach classes to their family, to their entire family. And I would do like, things like that. But their initial reaction is typically almost a sense of, where did I go wrong? How do I recover? Because it's like I'm influenced. I'm I've been influenced. So how do I recover? How do I now tell my friends, no, I'm not hanging out at the park today. I'm not hanging out. We're not rolling and we're not street rolling and doing chases, what they call it now, street racing and all this stuff, right? We had a Muslim son, and that's happened repeatedly, quite a bit, where they go out and street race, and Muslim kids dying on the streets in street races. That's happened in communities I've been in myself, Muslim communities that I've been in, where young kids are dying out there, because they want to be with the crowd, the in crowd, as they want to call it. They want to be with that in crowd. And their parents got money, if they're, especially from immigrant parents that might come here and successful, and they're driving a nice, M4 or something, right? BMW. They getting out there, and I'm seeing them. People got to understand. Yusef is out there. I see this because I'm in this world because I'm a person of service in our community. So I see that. I have exposure to this. And when I see them out there, it's like, subhanAllah, what are you doing here? Right? Um, I have brothers of mine, Muslims, that literally hit the street to try to pull people in that are non-Muslims. All right. And they might say, hey, what you doing out here? I know you're not Mexican. What are you? No, I'm Pakistani. Oh, for real? Okay. How did you end up, hanging out here? Happens all the time. We don't talk about it, but it's happening. you know, among other things, right? Indulging in alcohol, marijuana, pornography, all the other stuff that comes with that culture of being cool and being somebody that they like now, especially in the public school systems. But the private school sector is not protected from this that I'm talking about. They're not, because my students were in private school, right? So the percentage maybe of folks, of young Muslim youth that are impacted is lower, of course, than the public school sector, but it's there still. I've had students that had issues with pornography, issues with marijuana use, and one of them, it was funny. I was at MCA. This was years ago, so I could say MCA. Approached me, a young youth approached me and said, um, hey, Yusef, when you get a minute, because I was talking to a group of youth, and he said, once he got me to the site, he's like, He was like, I'm one of those kids, You smoke weed? And he said, yeah, I smoke weed. All right. And then I was called to do a talk there at MCA after that, right? And the day that I did the talk, and it's interesting because it seemed like, and I don't know, maybe the parents was oblivious, maybe they wasn't. But when I entered the room, I smelled it. I smelled marijuana inside the youth lounge. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this just me or
Yeah.
I smell it? And I put them on blast. So when it was time for me to get up to speak, I put them on blast. I said, so I know someone in this room been smoking weed. And the ones that was doing it, they started doing like this. So, I said, oh, okay. You guilty? You guilty? Ooh. That's me. And I think we have to get to the root of it. My methods has been very effective because they know they can't really lie to me, somebody like me, because I've been there and done that, right? So, and now being a Muslim, is just more empowerment that I'm able to uh, instill in our young people, and we have to, because if we don't educate them about this culture, because I think the mistake we make is we just, like I was saying earlier, we just say, "Kufr, that's haram." No, subhanallah. Just we want to just grab them by the neck and just say haram, kufr. Like that's the magic antidote, right?
Doesn't
That they're
work.
going to stop doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That within itself, it's not, no one is saying that it's not true, because whatever it is
Yes,
may
right,
very well be haram or kufr, but at that point in that context, it's not a legal discussion.
right,
What
right,
what is the
right.
void within that young person that they're trying to
Hmm.
fill with these other things? That's the root of it.
Yes, that's it. Absolutely.
And that's not a legal issue in its nature.
Hmm. Hmm.
Coming from a different place. It's coming from maybe some kind of wound or neglect or whatever. I mean, you have a lot of different things
Yes.
that may be out there. And I really appreciate the fact that you're emphasizing the importance of shukr, because that's universal.
Hmm. Yes, it is.
You could be having, short day-to-day conversations, parents with their kids, mentors with their mentees, whatever the frequency. I'm just generically mentioning parents with their kids, in theory on a daily basis. If it's, hey, what's something that you're grateful for today? Just to teach
Hmm.
them how to
Right,
think about it.
exactly.
Because
Right,
if every day they have to think about it even for a moment, well, I'm thankful for food. The next day, I'm thankful for water. I'm thankful
right.
for clothing. And what you hit the nail on the head when you talked about taking groups of youth to these places in
Mhm.
person, in real
Right,
time,
right.
firsthand, because
Hmm.
what they're seeing and experiencing is real. I mean, there's
Yes.
no other way to put it. It's
Hmm.
absolutely real, and they're seeing uh, in-depth struggle in front of them.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, when you and when they see the gratitude, if you hand someone a bag of food, if you hand them a sandwich, if you whatever
Hmm.
the lunch or the meal may be, and then you see
Hmm.
the gratitude from them,
Hmm.
where in that moment they're present, recognizing this blessing that's now in their hands that they were not expecting,
Right.
for them to respond with gratitude, it
Oh
seeing,
yeah, absolutely.
interacting, subhanallah.
Yes, subhanAllah.
It's like
And
go ahead.
no, you can finish.
I was gonna say, I wonder how you labeled or would describe those experiences. It makes me think of the term. It's like a spiritual field trip.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like,
I call it, I just told him, we're going to do some spiritual purification. I just referred to it as a tasawwuf, right? Or something like that. I know some scholars don't like the term tasawwuf. I do personally, but
yeah, it's like,
but spiritually, we're going on a tasawwuf trip,
mhm,
right? And spiritual purification, just so they can get that experience. And the interesting thing about it is when it comes down back to this topic on beer or piety, one of the things I like asking young people is, why is it that you do not respect your parents? What is it that caused you, and at what point can you pinpoint when that disrespect started? That's a question that needs to be asked. That's another way that you're going to have success getting to the bottom of it and rectifying that situation and have them make Toba to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concerning it, right? We have to get to that. I mean, they wouldn't rarely do it in front of me. It would be times if I noticed it, I would call them on it the next day because I would catch them do it when they were leaving the school and they're getting in the car or something like that. They're like, "Mama, open the trunk," or they talking crazy, and you know how they are, right? And
yeah,
and so they're leaving. So I don't really have. So usually I don't forget. So the next day I say, uh, Aisha or Muhammad, why? Noticed yesterday the way you were talking to your mom when you was leaving, or your dad. What's going on? I call them on it, right? So I think those are the things that we have to understand. We have to be proactive about it. If we're not proactive about it, it's going to really get out of control. And it really, to me, it's already out of control. Because, like I said, to go in a state in the United States where I know Muslims are really in masajids everywhere and things like that, and to see that, what I witnessed was incredible to me. I almost felt disrespected, to be honest with you, because I was in a game. So when I saw that, I said, wait a minute, I love that to become this. And you're going to that? I know
yeah.
what that is. I almost felt disrespected, you know? So I like with that move of them starting to walk towards me, but backed off a little, and then they were talking to each other. They felt something. I know they felt something. Like that dude was black, for one. He might have used to be, they had a conversation because I was waiting for him. I got out of the Uber and was like, "What's up?" You know, come on. Which y'all normally probably would do if it was somebody y'all thought y'all could pray on, maybe. I was like, "Salam alaikum." Oh, alaikum assalam. And they like, like, oh. Well. But when I left the masjid, they were gone. So hey, I think there's work that needs to happen. This issue can be solved. It's just in steps, in degrees, and you know, uh, it should be every masajid should have a program that addresses it. I'll put it that way.
In terms of
Whether it's once a
mentorship, in terms of,
yeah,
yeah,
in terms of a program that addresses filial piety, the rights of parents. It should be a course. It should be a requirement that they have to go through this course periodically at different stages of their growth and development, right? That has to be revisited. It can't be something that's left, and just, okay, we'll teach them that when they're in kindergarten and, first grade, second grade age. I think periodically, as they go through their stages of development and growth, that subject has to be revisited.
and especially if there are these uh it's like 3D tazkiyat nafs. Like going
Right.
in real
Exactly.
time. Like this is it's like a dishwasher for the human heart. Like that's
Exactly. You have to, because look at
that
this.
in it. Yeah.
And the reason, and I'm gonna tell you, so you have these stages where they're at as young people, in elementary school age, right? And then guess what? They go into middle school age. It's going to be a whole nother group of influences in people. It's changing.
Yeah.
New friends, new people. Then boom, next stage. They go into high school. Another group, another type. They're talking about getting cars already now. They're trying to drive. They're another level that has to be reinforced again. Then college. That's send them off right. Because now they're going into the college age. Now this is going to be another level of it where you're almost on your own because you're grown now. You're going to be arrested if you do this and that and the other. It's different. And they know no more calling the parents
Yeah.
when you mess up. So that's why I say it's so critical that this should be a requirement within the masajid, that at each stage that this subject is really hammered and this in a form of not just a halakha, right? One halakha and it's done. No, curriculum. In a curriculum that's taught, right, for several weeks, perhaps, right, and then they graduate, and then boom, go to the next phase. When they get older, boom, it's going to come around so fast because the kids are growing. The world is moving, right? So before you know it, the next stage, boom, same thing, go through that same process. So that's just the way I've always looked at it, honestly. Because even when I taught this subject from the text, Bir Walidain from the Shuyuk Mauritania, because I studied through Table Foundation, who in turn studied under Sheikh Hamza, who developed a relationship with our Shuyuk over in Mauritania. That text, my Sheikh Muhammad Maulud and the other texts that we studied, that was the way I was received it and went over it periodically, and then I in turn gave it back to the brothers, to the Muslims that I was teaching inside the institution. So, and I did that for years. So I'm talking about years, So I think it's something that we should try to incorporate in the community, in the masajid.
Yeah. It's a priority, and there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely a need for sure. It
Mm-hmm.
makes me think of because I've also been working with youth now for almost 15 years in different
Okay.
capacities. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Makes me think of the general template from Sayyidina Ali, right? The 7-7-7. And then
Mm-hmm.
within each of those three macro periods, then that can be broken down, year by year, because
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have a big difference between even a third grader and a fourth grader, for example. It's one year,
Right.
but they have different needs and their
Yeah.
capacity is different.
Exactly.
So for there
Yeah,
to
it could be
be,
different versions. I think like different versions of the whole idea. Because even from the text, uh, um, uh, Matar Kalub, right? You can use that text that deals with some aspects of the heart and shukr and things like that. Sit niya, right? Sincerity of intention and things of that. There's so many aspects that could be covered around this spiritual purification as it relates to not only shukr but to birr walidain. So.
so you've mentioned two key texts, one in connection with Birrul Walidain specifically,
Yeah.
another purification of the heart. Is there a
Mm-hmm.
third one as we kind of wrap up that you have in mind or that you've spent time with, engaging with, teaching to?
Yeah, I think those two specifically, and then also Maharam Lisan, because I think the nature of our communication has to be refined again in our youth and how they communicate. They talking just like, they're using the N-word, just the way we talk. The same way African Americans talk to each other using the N-word, our young Pakistani, Arab kids and Indian kids are speaking in the same manner. So, I think the tongue has to be addressed as well, which is another Sheikh Muhammad Maulud text that should be considered and as a part of that curriculum that we teach. So,
No, Jazakallah khair. That's a
well, yeah.
and maybe we can further this conversation more offline, just to brainstorm different ideas
Yes.
and with different things in connection with
Yeah.
this.
We need to have some field trips, man. Get these kids enrolled and take them out and put them in the woods for a day or a weekend rather, or a week or however long, and build on this subject. And that could be the theme. That could be the theme. You create retreats for adults. We should have retreats like this for our young people that we can enroll. They can have activity and fun in that process, but the theme of it should be shukr and birrul walidain.
Yeah.
You just imagine, you can have a huge impact, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Is there as we conclude, Jazakallah khair again for the time, is there, we don't need to mention any names, that's your prerogative, but is there a specific example of maybe a particular young person who you saw transform, going from heading in a certain direction that you would not want them to go in, and then pivoting and going in the right direction?
Yes.
Kind of a success story.
I have multiple success stories like that, actually. And one of them was with someone that, like I mentioned earlier about the marijuana use. One of them was a marijuana user, and I was able to help him deal with that situation. And yes, subhanAllah, he ended up going to college. He didn't do what his parents actually wanted him to do. But he still went to a college of his liking and played sports and things like that, and was able to take advantage of that, and graduated. And like I said, I don't think there's a need to mention his name, but he wasn't the only case. There was other situations like similar to that, where I was able to get them away from that, and one of them was a sexual thing where they was sleeping with girls. And, I was able to get them away from that and talk to them about marriage. I said, since you sounds like you're ready to get married. That's how I approach it. I didn't approach it like, oh, haram, haram, but
Yeah.
it's time. You should get married. Yeah, let's do this halal. Let's make it halal, So, as long as it's staying within the framework of Quran and Sunnah, no Muslim should have an issue with our approach.
If somebody, let's say there is a parent watching this, listening to this, and a lot of things are resonating with them. Let's say they have a teenager, and parent wants to somehow book a session with you to get advice as far as mentoring, to pick your brain a little bit. Is there a way that they can do that? Is there a place they can go to schedule?
Yeah, I have a personal website. In addition to my organization, I have a personal website where they can go to and get that. It's www.ywspeaks.com. Very easy. ywspeaks.com. And they can leave a message there. I'll receive it. They can communicate with me there, and I could be in touch with them within 24 hours. Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless the time and effort. Thank you for sharing the words of wisdom, different gems scattered everywhere that, if you pick up even one and hang on to it and put into practice consistently, then we'll benefit tremendously. And this deen is about practice, not just about knowledge in the theoretical realm, but the knowledge within our capacity is supposed to be put into practice as best we can. So we ask Allah to help us to do that. We ask Allah to guide our youth and to protect them, and to provide mentorship for them, and to also enable them when they grow up and they advance to those next stages in life, to then, pay it forward and to reach back and help those who would be youth. They get a little bit older, inshallah. جزاك khair again. We'll go ahead and سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.